I stood barefoot in the security line, my belt coiled in the gray plastic tray like an accusation. An officer stepped forward, reciting my full legal name as if he had been rehearsing it all morning. I did not need to ask why. I knew exactly who had made the call. My parents did not just want me to miss my flight. They wanted me flagged as a threat before I could walk into the probate hearing. My name is Fiora Kingsmore. I am 38 years old, and at 5:45 in the morning, standing in the sterile, fluorescent cavern of Briarport International Airport. I was not a daughter, a wife, or a grieving granddaughter. I was a timeline. I was a sequence of calculated movements designed to get my body from Gate B12 to a courtroom in Redmere County before the clock struck 9. The inheritance hearing for my grandfather was scheduled for 9:30 in the morning. It was a strict deadline. In the world of probate law, being late does not garner sympathy. It implies indifference. If I was not sitting in that mahogany chair when the gavel came down. The narrative my parents had carefully constructed over the last 10 days would become the legal truth. I dragged my carry-on bag across the polished linoleum. The wheels hummed a low, steady vibration that traveled up my arm. My grip on the handle was tight, my knuckles white, a physical manifestation of the control I was forcing upon my own nervous system. I was not panicking. Panicking was what they expected. Panicking was the label they had already printed and were waiting to stick on my forehead. Inside my shoulder bag, resting against the lining, was a thin manila folder and a generic black USB drive. It did not look like much. It was not the kind of cinematic evidence people expect from television dramas. There were no grainy photographs of illicit affairs or secret recordings of violent threats. Real devastation in a family legal battle is usually boring. It is made of paper. It is bank statements with inconsistent dates. It is a signature on a power of attorney document that looks slightly too shaky. Signed 3 days after a medical chart noted the patient was nonverbal. That USB drive contained digital scans of nurse logs that contradicted my mother's sworn affidavit. It was dry, tedious, and absolutely lethal to their case. I checked the departure board. Flight 382 to Redmere was on time. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I did not need to look to know who it was. My mother had been texting me since 4 o'clock in the morning. Just stay home. Fiora, it is better this way. We do not want you to embarrass yourself in front of the judge. Dad is worried about your stress levels. You know how you get. I did not reply. That was the trap. Over the last week, since the funeral, they had tried everything to provoke a reaction. They wanted an angry voicemail. They wanted a hysterical text message with capital letters and exclamation points. They needed me to look unstable. They needed the judge to see a grieving, irrational woman who could not be trusted with the complex administration of an estate worth $6 million. Let us handle it, my father had said, his hand heavy on my shoulder at the gravesite. You are too emotional right now. Fiora, you will just confuse the proceedings. I had removed his hand, stepped back, and said nothing. I bought my ticket in silence. I packed my bag in silence. And now, I was walking toward the security checkpoint in silence. The line for the Transportation Security Administration was long, a sluggish river of sleepy travelers shuffling forward in their socks. I joined the queue, checking my watch. I had 2 hours before takeoff. Plenty of time. Yet, a cold prickle of unease sat at the base of my neck. It was the feeling of walking through a room where the furniture has been slightly rearranged in the dark. I moved forward. The rhythm of the checkpoint was hypnotic, bins clattering, the robotic instructions of the agents, laptops out, shoes off, belts off, empty your pockets. I reached the conveyor belt and grabbed 2 gray plastic trays. In the first one, I placed my laptop. In the second, I placed my jacket, my small purse, and my boots. I hesitated for a second before sliding my phone into the bin. It felt like surrendering a lifeline. Finally, I unbuckled my belt. It was a simple black leather strip with a silver buckle. I coiled it carefully and placed it in the tray next to my wallet. It looked harmless there, curled up like a sleeping snake against the gray plastic. I pushed the bins onto the rollers and watched them disappear into the mouth of the X-ray machine. I walked toward the body scanner. The agent waved me forward. Feet on the yellow marks. Hands above your head. I stepped inside the glass cylinder. The machine whirred around me. A 2-second scan of my physical form. I held my breath. Not because I was hiding anything, but because the air in here felt thin. Step out, the agent said. I stepped out, expecting the usual wave toward the conveyor belt to retrieve my things. My eyes went instantly to the other end of the X-ray machine. I could see my first bin, the one with the laptop sliding out, but the second bin, the one with my wallet, my ID, and that critical USB drive, had stopped inside the tunnel. Ma'am, the voice did not come from the TSA agent at the scanner. It came from my left. I turned. A uniformed airport police officer was standing right at the edge of the security zone. He was not looking at the crowd. He was looking directly at me. He was a tall man with a buzz cut and a face that seemed carved out of granite. Next to him stood a female officer, shorter, with eyes that scanned me up and down as if I were a biological specimen. "Fiora Kingsmore," the male officer asked. He did not ask it like a question. He said it like he was reading a label. My stomach dropped, not from guilt, but from recognition. This was specific. In a sea of 300 travelers, they had picked me out before I had even cleared the scanner. "Yes," I said. My voice was steady, but my pulse hammered against my ribs. "Is there a problem?" The male officer did not blink. He took a single step into my personal space, effectively blocking my path to the conveyor belt. "Ma'am, please come with us." The noise of the terminal seemed to drop away. The travelers behind me, who had been sighing and checking their watches, suddenly went dead silent. There is a specific kind of silence that happens in an airport when authority descends. It is a mix of relief that it is not happening to you, and a voyeuristic hunger to see what happens to the person it is happening to. "I do not understand," I said. Planting my feet, I did not move toward them. "I have a flight in 2 hours. I need to collect my belongings." "Your belongings will be secured, ma'am," the female officer said. Her tone was flat, professional, and completely dismissive. "Right now, we need you to step this way. There has been a report." "What kind of report?" I asked. "We will discuss it in private," the male officer said. He gestured with his hand, not touching me, but the threat of contact was there. It was a corralling motion. He was hurting me. I looked past his shoulder at the X-ray belt. My second bin had finally emerged. I saw my wallet. I saw the corner of my boarding pass sticking out of my purse. I saw the coiled black belt. They were less than 10 feet away, but they might as well have been on the moon. "I need my identification," I said. "And I need my medication from my bag." It was a lie. I did not take medication, but I wanted to see their reaction. I wanted to see if this was a standard random check or something else. "We have your ID," the female officer said. She held up a clear plastic bag. Inside, I saw my driver's license. They had already taken it. They had pulled it from the bin before I even exited the scanner. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. This was not a random screening. This was an interception. People were staring now. A man in a business suit looked at me with open suspicion. Pulling his children slightly closer to him, a woman whispered something to her husband. In their eyes, I had transformed. 10 seconds ago, I was a fellow passenger. Now, I was a risk. I was a disruption. I was the woman the police stopped. My parents were not here physically. They were likely sitting in their kitchen in Redmere, drinking coffee, watching the clock. But I could feel them in the architecture of this moment. This was their style. They never screamed. They maneuvered. They never hit. They suggested. They used structures, social norms, family reputation, and now, the law to crush dissent. "Ma'am," the male officer said, his voice dropping an octave. "Do not make a scene. Step this way." Make a scene. The phrase triggered a memory. Fiora always makes a scene. My mother used to tell the school counselors, "She is just dramatic." If I argued, I was hysterical. If I raised my voice, I was a threat. If I refused to move, I was resisting. I looked at the officer. I looked at the gate area beyond him, where freedom and my flight to Redmere lay. Then I looked at the floor. "Okay," I said quietly. I walked where they pointed. I walked barefoot on the cold airport tiles, humiliated, separated from my shoes and my dignity. We moved away from the security line, past the staring eyes of strangers, toward a set of frosted glass doors near the administrative offices. The walk felt impossibly long. Every second that ticked by was a victory for the people who wanted me to miss that hearing. The male officer opened the door and gestured for me to enter. It was a small room. There were no windows. The walls were painted a suffocating beige. In the center of the room was a metal table bolted to the floor and 2 chairs. The air conditioning was humming loudly, a drone that drilled into my temples. "Sit down," the officer said. I sat. The metal of the chair was freezing against my legs. The door clicked shut behind them. The sound was final. It was the sound of a trap snapping closed. I looked at my hands resting on the table. They were trembling, just slightly. I balled them into fists to stop it. This was not about airport security. This was not about a random search. I closed my eyes and took a breath. My parents had made a mistake. They thought that by humiliating me, by stripping me of my belt and my shoes and my schedule, they would break me. They thought I would crumble into the unstable daughter they had painted in their affidavits. But as I sat there, staring at the gray door, the fear began to recede. It was replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. They had not just inconvenienced me, they had weaponized the federal government to settle a family score. And that meant the rules had changed. This was no longer a family dispute. This was war. The room smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. It was a smell designed to be neutral, to strip away personality, just like the fluorescent lights that hummed overhead. The male officer sat across from me. He placed a tablet on the metal table with a deliberate, heavy motion. He did not slide it. He planted it. The screen was dark, reflecting the tension in the room. He introduced himself as Officer Harlan Voss. His voice was a low rumble, the kind of voice that did not need to shout to be heard. He had the tired, cynical eyes of a man who had seen every excuse a traveler could invent. Standing by the door, arms crossed over her chest, was the female officer. She introduced herself as Officer Marin Klein. She was the watcher. While Voss engaged, she observed. She was looking for the twitch of a finger, the rapid blinking of eyelids, the sheen of sweat on a forehead. She was waiting for me to break. I sat perfectly still. My hands were clasped loosely in my lap. I breathed in for a count of 4 and out for a count of 4. It was a technique I had learned not for anxiety, but for negotiation. My parents had taught me early on that emotion was a weakness they could exploit. If I cried, I lost. If I yelled, I lost. The only way to survive a Kingsmore interrogation was to be a statue. "Ms. Kingsmore," Voss began, tapping the screen of his tablet. It lit up, casting a pale blue glow on his face. "We received a report regarding your travel today, a very specific report." "Specific in what way?" I asked. My voice was level. Voss looked up from the screen. "The report states that you are, and I quote, a danger to the public environment. It claims you have been making statements that have caused significant alarm to those around you." He paused, letting the words hang in the dead air. Then he delivered the final strike. "The report alleges that you are flying for the purpose of revenge." The word hung between us. Revenge. It was a theatrical word. It was a word that belonged in a cheap paperback novel, or perhaps in the title of the YouTube channels I managed. But hearing it spoken by a uniformed police officer in a secure room turned it into something else. It turned it into a threat assessment. It changed the color of the atmosphere from administrative annoyance to potential violence. I did not flinch. I did not gasp. I looked Voss directly in the eye. "Who made this report?" I asked. Voss leaned back slightly. "We cannot disclose the identity of the caller at this stage. It was an anonymous tip received through our airport security hotline." "Anonymous," I repeated. "The source is not the issue right now. Klein interjected from the doorway. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the low hum of the air conditioning. The content of the threat is the issue. I nodded slowly. I see. So someone calls and says I am on a revenge mission. They use the word revenge specifically, and because of that word, you have pulled me off the line, separated me from my belongings, and are currently detaining me. We are investigating a credible threat, Voss corrected. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was now 6:10 in the morning. My flight boarded in 40 minutes. You are not investigating a threat, Officer Voss, I said. You are executing a delay, Voss narrowed his eyes. Excuse me. I am traveling to Redmere County for a probate hearing, I said. I spoke clearly, enunciating every syllable. My grandfather died 10 days ago. His estate is worth millions of dollars. The hearing to determine who controls that estate is scheduled for 9:30 this morning, if I am not in that courtroom. The other parties involved, the people who likely made this call, will petition the judge to proceed without me. Voss looked at the tablet again. He scrolled down, his finger moving slowly. I could see the doubt flickering behind his eyes. But he was a creature of procedure. He had boxes to check. The report mentions the hearing, Voss admitted. He sounded reluctant to give me that ground. But it frames it differently. The caller stated that you are mentally unstable. They claimed you are traveling to the court to confront family members and that you might resort to physical violence if the ruling does not go your way. Unstable, I said. That is their favorite word. Who is they? Klein asked. My parents, I said. Malcolm and Eleanor Kingsmore. Voss stopped scrolling. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time. He was looking for the crazy woman described in the report. He was looking for the shaking hands, the darting eyes, the incoherent rambling. Instead, he found a woman sitting in a plastic chair, barefoot, discussing her own framing with the detachment of a paralegal. There is something else, Voss said. He tapped a section of the digital report. This is the part that concerns us regarding security. The caller stated that you are carrying documents that are vital to the hearing, but, and this is the strange part, they claimed you intend to destroy them if confronted by security. I paused. My mind raced, processing this new piece of information. It was a clumsy lie. It was too complex. A real threat reporter would say I had a bomb or a knife. They would say I was going to hurt someone. But to say I would destroy my own documents, that was a strategic error. It was a detail born from my father's paranoia. He was terrified of the nurse logs on my USB drive. In his mind, those documents were the danger. So when he concocted this lie, he projected his own fear into the police report. Think about that for a second. Officer, I said. I leaned forward, resting my forearms on the cold metal table. Why would I destroy the evidence I need to win my case? Voss frowned. People do irrational things when they are agitated. I am not agitated, I said, and I am not irrational. I am a woman who has the proof of medical neglect in her carry-on bag. If I destroy those documents, my parents win. Why would I fly 500 miles just to burn the only leverage I have? The room went silent. I could hear the hum of the vending machine in the hallway outside. If someone wanted to warn you about a dangerous passenger, I continued, pressing my advantage, they would tell you I had a weapon. They would tell you I was making threats to the crew. But they did not do that. They told you to look for documents. They told you to look for the one thing they want to disappear. Voss looked at Klein. Klein uncrossed her arms. The dynamic in the room was shifting. The narrative was cracking. You are being used, I said. I did not say it with anger. I said it with sympathy. They know you have to take every report seriously. They know that if you hear the word threat or unsafe, you have to stop me. They do not need you to arrest me. Officer Voss, they just need you to hold me here for 45 minutes. That is all it takes. If I miss that flight, I miss the hearing. And if I miss the hearing, they control the money. Voss rubbed his chin. The stubble made a rasping sound. He looked down at the tablet again, but this time, he was reading it with a different lens. He was no longer looking for a terrorist. He was looking for a liar. The caller ID was blocked, Voss said, almost to himself. Of course it was, I said. But you have the metadata. You have the intake logs from the dispatch center. Check the timestamps. We cannot just... Klein started to protest. If this was a genuine emergency, I cut in, turning to look at her. The caller would have stayed on the line. They would have given their name. They would have wanted credit for saving the day. But if this is a strategic strike, they would have hesitated. They would have wanted to make sure they got the script right. I turned back to Voss. Check the logs. Officer, please, if I am wrong, you can keep me here all day. But if I am right, you are currently acting as the private security force for a couple of civil litigants who are terrified of what is on that USB drive. Voss stared at me for a long moment. Then, without a word, he tapped a sequence of commands onto the tablet. He brought up the raw dispatch log. He swiped left, expanding the data field for the incident report. His eyes narrowed. What is it? Klein asked, stepping closer to the table. There are 3 entries, Voss said. His voice had lost its interrogative edge. It was now purely analytical. Same incoming number hash, same location tower. 3 calls, I asked. The first one came in at 5:12 in the morning. Voss read, duration 6 seconds. Caller disconnected before speaking. He scrolled down. Second call at 5:14 in the morning. Duration 12 seconds. Caller connected. Said, I need to report, and then disconnected again. He looked up at me. The suspicion that had been directed at me was now evaporating, replaced by a cold, hard realization of wasted time. The third call, Voss continued, was at 5:16 in the morning. That was the one that generated the report. That was the one where they read the script. They were rehearsing, I said softly. My father gets nervous when he has to lie to authority figures. He probably choked the first 2 times. Voss placed the tablet flat on the table. He looked at the gray walls of the interrogation room. And then he looked at me. He looked at my bare feet, my composed face, and the empty chair where a dangerous criminal was supposed to be sitting. He let out a long, weary sigh. It was the sound of a man who realized he had been played. Officer Klein, Voss said, standing up. Go check her bag. Do a manual search of the papers and the electronics, but do it fast. You believe her? Klein asked. I believe that a terrorist does not call dispatch 3 times to get their story straight, Voss said. He looked at me. And I believe Ms. Kingsmore has a plane to catch. He did not apologize. Police officers rarely do. But the way he stood back, opening the line of sight between me and the door, was an admission in itself. However, Voss added, his voice hardening slightly as he looked at the tablet again, we still have to clear the flag. The report is in the system. We cannot just delete it. I understand, I said. Check the bag. Check the USB. You will find nursing logs and spreadsheets. Officer, nothing that explodes, only things that prove who was actually caring for my grandfather while my parents were busy planning how to spend his money. Voss nodded, but as he turned to the door, he paused. If this is a false report, he said, making it is a crime, a federal crime. I know, I said. That is why I want you to save that audio file. I have a feeling I am going to need it. Voss looked at me with a new expression. It was not quite respect, but it was close. It was the recognition of one professional to another. Sit tight, he said. We will be back in 5 minutes. The door closed again. I was alone in the room. I looked at my hands. They were still steady, but inside, my heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. 2 dropped calls. My father had hesitated. That was unlike him. Malcolm Kingsmore was a man of absolute, terrifying confidence. If he had hesitated, it meant he was desperate. And if he was desperate, it meant they knew exactly how weak their position was. They had tried to use the system to stop me, but in their haste, they had left fingerprints on the weapon. I leaned back in the cold chair and waited for the sound of the lock turning. The delay was working against me. The clock was ticking down, But for the first time that morning, I felt a surge of genuine power. They had made the one mistake you never make in a revenge story. They had given the protagonist the evidence. Officer Klein held the tablet against her chest for a moment, looking at me with an expression I could not quite parse. It was no longer the sharp suspicion of a sentinel guarding a gate. It was something closer to pity, mixed with the uncomfortable realization that she had walked into the middle of a private tragedy. She took a step toward the metal table and turned the screen so it faced me. "The report was filed under a specific name," Klein said. Her voice was quiet, stripped of the command tone she had used 10 minutes ago. The caller identified himself to the dispatch operator. I looked at the screen. The brightness was turned up high, stinging my eyes in the windowless room. The text was black against a white background, a standard digital form with fields for time, location, and nature of the threat. My eyes skipped over the codes and settled on the field labeled Reporting Party, Malcolm Kingsmore. Seeing the name printed there, in official police sans serif font, did not make me angry. It made me feel cold. It was a sensation that started in my stomach and radiated out to my fingertips, numbing them. I had known it was him. I had told myself it was him while I was standing in the security line, but knowing it and seeing it entered into a federal record were two very different things. My father had not just called me. He had logged his betrayal with the government. "That is my father," I said. My voice sounded hollow in the small room. Officer Voss leaned forward. The skepticism that had defined his posture earlier was gone, replaced by a heavy, weary caution. "We need to play you the audio. Ms. Kingsmore, we need you to confirm the voice. If this is a domestic dispute that has spilled over into federal jurisdiction, we need to be absolutely certain before we clear this flag." "Play it," I said. Voss tapped the screen. There was a burst of static, followed by the electronic beep of a recording starting. Then, my father's voice filled the room. "Yes. Hello. I need to report a passenger. My daughter. She is not well." I closed my eyes. He sounded perfect. He sounded exactly like the heartbroken, worried father he played so well at dinner parties and country club gatherings. His voice had just the right amount of tremor, a carefully calibrated vibration of concern. He did not sound angry. He sounded scared. "She has been making statements," the recording continued. "Violent statements about the people on the plane, about herself. We tried to stop her from leaving the house, but she just ran. She is unstable. I am terrified she might do something drastic once she is in the air." "Sir, can you be specific?" The operator's voice cut in, professional and detached. "Has she made a specific threat against the aircraft?" There was a pause. This was the moment of hesitation Voss had noted earlier. "She said she was going to make everyone pay." My father said, "She is headed to the inheritance hearing this morning, and she said if she does not get what she wants, no one will be walking away from it. She is desperate. Please, you have to stop her. It is not safe." Voss tapped the screen again, and the audio cut off. The silence that rushed back into the room was heavy. "He slipped," I said. I opened my eyes and looked at Voss. Voss nodded slowly. "He mentioned the hearing." "Exactly," I said. "If I were a terrorist, or if I were planning to bring down a plane, why would my destination matter? Why would a hearing matter? He mentioned it because that is the only thing on his mind. He does not care about the safety of Flight 382. He cares about stopping me from walking into that courtroom." He used the words, "not safe and unstable" 5 times in under 30 seconds, Klein noted. Reading from the transcript on the screen, "Those are key words. They are designed to trigger an immediate detainment protocol." "He knows that," I said. "He is a retired corporate liability consultant. He knows exactly which words trigger a red flag in a bureaucratic system. He drafted that script. That is why he hung up the first 2 times. He was getting the tone right." I sat up straighter. The numbness was fading, replaced by a sharp, crystalline focus. My parents had overplayed their hand. By recording his voice, by putting his specific objective, the hearing, on tape. My father had given me the weapon I needed, but I had to secure it. "Officer Voss," I said, "I would like you to run my background check again. Right now, in front of me." Voss looked at me, surprised by the command. "We already ran a preliminary check when we pulled you out of line. Run it again," I said. "Check for restraining orders. Check for history of mental health holds. Check for any prior arrests, any domestic disturbances, any history of violence. Check everything." Voss typed on his keyboard. The keys clacked loudly. He stared at the screen for a long minute, his eyes scanning the lines of data that represented my life in the eyes of the state. "Nothing," Voss said. "Clean record, no prior contacts, no medical flags in the national database, not on the no-fly list." "So," I said, keeping my voice level, "you have a passenger with a pristine record. You have a caller who is a known party in a high-stakes financial dispute with that passenger, and that caller explicitly mentioned the financial dispute in the middle of a supposed safety report." I let the logic land. I did not need to scream. The facts were screaming for me. "It is a retaliatory report," Voss said. He rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture of frustration. "We see it in custody battles sometimes. One parent calls security on the other to make them miss a visitation window. But this is for $6 million, I said. "If I miss that hearing, their lawyer will tell the judge that I am erratic, that I failed to appear, and that I was detained by airport police for making threats. They will use the fact that you stopped me as proof that I am unstable. They do not need a conviction. They just need the incident." Voss looked at Klein. They exchanged a look of grim understanding. They realized they had been weaponized. They were no longer protecting the public. They were pawns in a family feud. "We are clearing you," Voss said abruptly. He stood up. "I am overriding the flag. You are free to go." "Not yet," I said. Voss froze. "Excuse me. I need paper," I said. "I need an incident report number. I need a printed statement from this department confirming that I was stopped, searched, and cleared, and it needs to state clearly that no contraband was found and no arrests were made." "We can provide an interaction receipt," Klein said, "but a full report takes time to process." "I do not need the full report right now," I said. "I need a document with today's date and a timestamp that proves I was here and that I was released without charge, and I need something else." I looked directly at the tablet where my father's voice was trapped in digital amber. "I want that audio file preserved," I said. "And the metadata, the call logs, the duration, the originating number, do not let it be purged in the 24-hour cycle. I am formally requesting that evidence be preserved for civil litigation." Voss stared at me. He was seeing the transition happen in real time. The victim was gone. The litigant had arrived. "I will mark the file for retention," Voss said. "I can print you the incident number and a clearance certificate. That will get you through the gate if the airline gives you trouble." He walked over to a small printer in the corner of the room. It whirred to life, spitting out a single sheet of thermal paper. He tore it off and handed it to me. It was a flimsy piece of paper, warm to the touch, but it had the Department of Homeland Security watermark on it. It was a shield. "Thank you," I said. I stood up. My legs felt stiff from the tension. I walked toward the door, but Voss cleared his throat. "There is one more thing," he said. I turned back. Voss was looking at the tablet again, scrolling down to the very bottom of the report notes. He looked uncomfortable. "The caller," Voss said, avoiding my eyes. "He made a supplementary request to the dispatch operator. It is in the notes field." "What did he ask?" "He told us to be sure to check your luggage specifically for documents," Voss said. "He said you were carrying papers that proved you were delusional. He claimed you had written manifestos that were dangerous. He asked us to seize any folders or USB drives we found so they could be evaluated by mental health professionals." The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. It was so transparent it was almost insulting. He did not care about me being on the plane. He wanted the USB drive. He knew I had the nurse logs. He knew I had the proof that he and my mother had neglected my grandfather in his final weeks. He had tried to trick the police into conducting an illegal search and seizure of my evidence under the guise of a safety check. "It was a fishing expedition," I whispered. "He wanted us to confiscate your files," Klein said, her voice hard. She was angry now. Police officers hate being treated like private mercenaries. "He tried to use a federal security checkpoint to strip you of your legal documents." "Did you?" I asked. "Did you take anything?" "No," Voss said firmly. "We never opened the folder. We scanned it for organic compounds and explosives. It cleared. We did not read a word." I nodded. A small knot of tension in my chest loosened, but only slightly. "He is desperate," I said. "He knows what is on that drive." "Ms. Kingsmore," Voss said. He walked around the table and opened the door for me. "Go catch your flight, and if you need this recording subpoenaed, have your lawyer call me directly. I do not like being lied to." "Thank you, officer," I said. I walked out of the interrogation room. The noise of the terminal rushed back in the announcements, the rolling suitcases, the chatter of hundreds of people going about their lives. It was disorienting. 10 minutes ago, I had been a prisoner. Now, I was just a passenger again. I walked to the security conveyor belt. My bins were sitting on a secondary table, isolated, my boots, my jacket, the gray plastic tray holding my belt. I picked up the belt. The leather felt cold. I threaded it through the loops of my trousers. My hands moving mechanically, I put on my boots. I zipped up my jacket. I checked my bag. The folder was there. The USB drive was there. I was safe. I was cleared. I had the incident number in my pocket and the evidence in my bag. But as I grabbed the handle of my suitcase and turned toward the gate, I did not feel relief. I did not feel the lightness of escape. I felt a heavy, sinking certainty. My father had failed to stop me at security. But Malcolm Kingsmore was not a man who relied on a single plan. If he was willing to commit a felony by filing a false police report, he was willing to do anything. He knew I was coming. He knew I had cleared the checkpoint, and now, he had 2 hours while I was in the air to set the next trap. I looked at the departure screens. Flight 382, on time. I started walking. I was not running away from them anymore. I was flying directly at them. The friction of the cheap carpet against my boot soles was the only sound in my ears as I left the security checkpoint. I did not run. Running in an airport draws eyes, and eyes were the last thing I needed. I walked with the stride of a business traveler late for a merger, purposeful, efficient, invisible. I scanned the overhead monitors. The row of digital numbers flickered, updating the status of 1,000 lives in real time. I found my flight. Flight 382 to Redmere. The status light blinked yellow. It did not say boarding. It did not say delayed. It said, "Sea Agent." My phone vibrated in my hand. A sharp, buzzing insect against my palm. I lifted it. A notification from the airline app was sitting on my lock screen. Trip update. Your reservation has been canceled. I stopped. For 1 second, the terminal spun around me. People rushed past, dodging my stationary figure like water around a rock. I opened the email. It was a standard automated message, cheerful and corporate, thanking me for contacting customer support. Per your request, the itinerary for passenger Fiora Kingsmore has been canceled. A refund credit has been issued to the original form of payment. I had not requested a cancellation. I had not spoken to an airline representative. I had been sitting in a windowless room with Officer Voss. My thumbs hovered over the customer service hotline button, but I stopped. No. Calling was a mistake. Calling meant sitting on hold for 40 minutes while listening to smooth jazz, waiting for a representative in a call center 3,000 miles away to read me a script. I needed a human being. I needed a face. I looked down the concourse. The customer service center for the airline was located near Gate B4. It was 100 yards away. I started walking. My father was efficient. I had to give him that. While I was detained by the police, explaining that I was not a domestic terrorist, he had been on the phone with the airline. He knew the timing perfectly. He knew that even if I cleared security, I would still need a seat on the plane, and he knew that without a boarding pass, I was just a woman standing in a terminal. I reached the service counter. The line was 3 people deep. A family with too much luggage was arguing about seat assignments. A man in a suit was tapping his foot, checking his watch. I did not have time for the line. I spotted a lane marked Priority Access. It was empty, guarded by a red velvet rope. I was not a priority member. I did not have status. But I unhooked the rope and stepped through. The agent behind the counter looked up. She was a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a name tag that read, Patricia. She opened her mouth to tell me I was in the wrong line, to point me back to the queue of regular passengers. I placed my driver's license on the counter. I did not slam it. I placed it with the precision of a surgeon placing a scalpel. My flight was canceled without my permission, I said. My voice was low, tight, and completely devoid of politeness. I need it reinstated, now. Patricia blinked. She adjusted her glasses. Ma'am, this is the priority line. I am currently holding a federal incident receipt number from the airport police, I said. I pulled the thermal paper Officer Voss had given me from my pocket and laid it next to my license. I have been the victim of a fraudulent report that delayed me at security while I was detained. The same person who filed that false report called your airline and canceled my ticket. I need you to look at the screen and tell me who made that call. The words airport police and fraudulent report acted like a circuit breaker. The robotic script about waiting in line died in her throat. Patricia looked at the thermal paper. She saw the Department of Homeland Security watermark. She saw the timestamp, less than 15 minutes old. She typed my name into her terminal. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Flight 382 to Redmere, she said, reading the screen. It shows here the reservation was canceled at 5:25 in the morning. That was 20 minutes ago. I was in police custody at 5:25, I said. So unless I made that call telepathically, it was not me. Who called? Patricia frowned, leaning closer to the monitor. The system notes say the caller verified identity using standard security protocols. They answered the security questions correctly. Mother's maiden name, date of birth, first elementary school. I felt a bitter taste in my mouth. Security questions. They are designed to stop strangers, hackers, and identity thieves. They are not designed to stop your parents. My father knew my mother's maiden name because he had been married to her for 40 years. He knew my first elementary school because he drove me there every morning in 1994. The system that was supposed to protect me was built on data that belonged to them as much as it belonged to me. The caller was a male, I asked. Yes, Patricia said. The notes say Mr. Kingsmore. He identified himself as the account holder's father and emergency contact. And what reason did he give? I pushed. The system requires a reason for a last-minute cancellation. Patricia hesitated. She looked at me, then back at the screen. She was reading something that made her uncomfortable. Read it, I said. Please, I need to know what is on my record. The notes say the passenger is experiencing a mental health crisis. Patricia read softly. The caller stated it was not safe for the passenger to fly alone and requested the ticket be voided for her own protection. There it was again. Not safe, protection. The same language he had used with the police. He was painting a consistent picture across multiple databases. He was building a paper trail of instability that he could present to the probate judge later. Look, Your Honor, even the airline thought she was too crazy to fly. I am the passenger, I said. I am standing right here. Do I look like I am in a crisis? Patricia looked at me. She saw the sharp blazer, the steady hands, the intense but controlled focus. No, she admitted. You do not. I need you to print that, I said. Ma'am, these are internal company notes. I cannot. I have a police incident number, I repeated, tapping the thermal paper from Officer Voss. This is part of an ongoing investigation into harassment and interference with a federal flight. If you do not give me that record, I will have to ask Officer Voss to come over here and subpoena it, and that will take hours, and I will miss my flight, and your airline will be named in the lawsuit for aiding a harasser. I did not shout. I did not threaten to get her fired. I simply laid out the mechanics of the next 3 hours if she said no. Patricia made a decision. She typed a command. The dot matrix printer under the counter began to grind. "I can give you a transaction history," she said, lowering her voice. "It shows the cancellation time, the caller's stated name, and the reason code. That is all I can do." "That is enough," I said. She tore the sheet off and slid it across the counter. I glanced at it. "Caller Malcolm Kingsmore. Reason medical/safety. Unfit to travel." He had done it. He had put it in writing. "Now," I said, sliding my credit card onto the counter. "Get me back on that plane." Patricia grimaced. She tapped a few keys, and her face fell. "Ma'am, when the ticket was canceled, the seat was released back into the inventory. Flight 382 is oversold. We have a standby list of 8 people." My heart stopped. This was the checkmate. He did not just need to cancel the ticket. He needed to give my seat away. If the plane was full, it did not matter if I was sane. It did not matter if I had the police report. Physics was physics. No seat meant no flight. "There has to be a seat," I said. "Check first class. Check the jump seat. I do not care. I will sit in the lavatory if I have to." "The flight is full," Patricia said. She looked genuinely sorry. "I can put you on the 10 o'clock flight to Dunhaven, but that involves a layover in Chicago." 10 o'clock was too late. The hearing started at 9:30. If I took the later flight, I would be walking into the courthouse after the judge had already ruled. "No," I said. "Check again. Someone always misses a flight. Someone gets stuck in traffic. Someone gets stopped at security." I stopped. Security. "Check seat 12A," I said. Patricia looked at me, confused. 12A. "Just check it," I said. "Is it occupied?" She typed. 12A is assigned to a passenger, Mr. D. Miller. He is checked in." "Has he scanned his boarding pass at the gate?" I asked. "No," Patricia said. "Not yet. Boarding has only just started." "Mr. Miller is not coming," I said. I did not know Mr. Miller, but I knew the rhythm of the security checkpoint. I had been standing behind a man in a gray suit when the police pulled me out of line. He had been carrying 3 bottles of expensive wine in his carry-on. Arguing with the TSA agent that they were gifts, he was going to be there for at least another 20 minutes while they searched his bags and made him check the wine. It was a gamble, a desperate 1-in-a-million shot. "Book me a new ticket," I said. "Full fare. I will pay for a guaranteed seat." "I cannot sell you a seat that is already checked in," Patricia said. "Then sell me a seat on the expectation of a no-show." I said, "Sell me a full fare, refundable ticket. If 12A shows up, I get off. If he does not, I take his spot. Put me at the top of the standby list. Override the others." "I cannot just override. I am a Premier Access member," I lied. "Or I will be, after I buy this ticket. How much is a full fare, last-minute ticket to Redmere?" Patricia typed. $1,240. "Do it," I said. My parents were trying to drain my resources. They thought I was worried about the cost of a lawyer. They did not understand that I would spend every cent I had to beat them. Patricia swiped my card. The receipt printed. She handed me a boarding pass. It had standby printed in large, bold letters across the center. "Go to the gate," she said. "Gate B12. Tell the gate agent you are the first priority standby. If Mr. Miller does not show up by 10 minutes prior to departure, the seat is yours." "Thank you," I said. I grabbed the boarding pass, my ID, and the damning printout of my father's cancellation. I turned and walked away from the counter. I had 10 minutes. I walked fast. My heels clicked a sharp staccato on the floor. I passed the duty-free shops, the newsstands, the bars where people were drinking beer at 6 in the morning. I felt a strange sense of detachment. I was moving through the world, but I was not part of it. I was a missile with a guidance system locked on Redmere County Courthouse. I reached the gate area. A crowd was gathered around the podium. The zone numbers were being called. Zone 3. Zone 3. Please board now. I stood near the desk, watching the door. I watched every passenger who scanned their pass. A young couple, a businessman, a woman with a cat carrier. No sign of Mr. Miller and his wine bottles. I checked the time. 6:45. The door closed in 10 minutes. My phone buzzed again. I assumed it was Francis, my husband, asking if I had made it, or maybe my mother, sending another text to gaslight me. I pulled the phone from my pocket. It was an email notification, but the sender was not family. The sender was clerk, Redmere, Court, Gov. I froze. I stepped out of the flow of foot traffic, finding a quiet spot near a pillar. I opened the email. The subject line was in all caps. Urgent scheduling order change. Estate of Arthur Kingsmore. I read the text. The words blurred for a second, then sharpened into focus. To all parties, please be advised that the emergency hearing regarding the temporary special administration of the estate of Arthur Kingsmore has been rescheduled, due to a conflict in Judge Halloway's afternoon docket, and in light of the urgent motions filed by the petitioners regarding asset preservation. The hearing has been moved up. New time 8:30 in the morning. I stared at the screen. 8:30? My flight landed at 8:15. The courthouse was 20 minutes from the airport. If the flight was on time, perfectly on time, I would land, run through the terminal, get a cab, and sprint into the courtroom exactly as the hearing was ending. If there was a headwind, I would be late. If there was a taxi line, I would be late. If the gate agent took too long to clear my standby seat, I would be late. My father knew. He had filed an urgent motion regarding asset preservation. That was the excuse. He had petitioned the court to move the time up, knowing full well that the only flight from Briarport landed at 8:15. He had engineered a timeline that was mathematically impossible. He wasn't just trying to stop me, he was mocking me. He was telling me that no matter how fast I ran, no matter how much money I spent on tickets, he owned the clock. Zone 4, the gate agent announced. Zone 4. I looked at the gate. I looked at the time. 8:30. I could not make it. Physics was against me, but then I looked at the boarding pass in my hand. Standby. I took a deep breath. I could not make it to the courthouse by 8:30. Not physically, but the email from the clerk had a second paragraph. A paragraph about remote participation for counsel. I was not counsel. I was a party. But if I was on that plane, and if that plane had Wi-Fi, and if I could convince the clerk that I was trapped in a metal tube at 30,000 feet, because of my father's interference, I walked up to the gate podium. The agent looked at me. "I am the standby," I said. "Is seat 12A open?" The agent looked at his screen. He looked down the jet bridge. He looked at the empty lane where passengers were boarding. "Looks like it is your lucky day," he said. "Mr. Miller is a no-show." He printed a new slip of paper. Seat 12A. I took it. I did not smile. "Thank you," I said. I walked down the jet bridge. I was going to be late. I was going to miss the start of the hearing, but I had a phone. I had a credit card to buy the fastest internet package the airline offered, and I had a folder full of evidence that proved my parents were liars. The doors of the plane were waiting. I stepped inside. The trap had snapped shut, but I was still breathing. And as long as I had a signal, I had a voice. The email on my phone screen was not just a notification. It was a tactical nuclear strike disguised as a calendar update. I sat in seat 12A, the leather cold against my back, and read the text for the third time. The message was from the Redmere County Clerk of Courts, R.E. Estate of Arthur Kingsmore, case number 492-B. Emergency motion for time, change granted. My eyes scanned the legal boilerplate. The hearing, originally set for 9:30 in the morning, had been moved to 8:30 in the morning. The reason cited was exigent circumstances regarding the safety of the estate assets. I looked at my watch. It was 6:55. My flight was scheduled to land at 8:15. If the hearing started at 8:30, I would be walking off the jet bridge exactly as the judge was calling the session to order. By the time I cleared the terminal and found a taxi, the proceedings would be halfway over. By the time I reached the courthouse steps, it would be finished. This was not a coincidence. It was a procedural chokehold. My parents knew I had cleared security. My father knew he had failed to stop me at the checkpoint, and he knew his attempt to cancel my ticket had only delayed me, not grounded me. So, he had called his lawyer. He had escalated the fight from the airport terminal to the judge's chambers. I could not let the plane door close yet. Once that heavy steel door sealed, I would be cut off from the world for 2 hours. I would be voiceless while they spun their narrative in a courtroom 500 miles away. I hit the dial button for the Redmere County Probate Division. The phone rang. 1 ring, 2 rings. It was early, just before 7 in the morning in the Central Time Zone. But the clerk's office opened at 7 sharp for docket management. Probate Division. Clerk's office. A woman's voice answered. She sounded brisk, surrounded by the rustle of paper. "This is Fiora Kingsmore," I said. My voice was not the voice of a panicked daughter. It was the voice of a litigant. I pitched it low and hard, stripping away any tremor of emotion. "I am a named party in the estate of Arthur Kingsmore, case number 492-B. I just received a notification that the hearing time has been moved." "1 moment," the clerk said. I heard the click of a keyboard. "Yes, Kingsmore. Judge Holloway granted an emergency motion to reschedule about 20 minutes ago." "On what grounds?" I asked. "The motion was filed by the petitioners, Malcolm and Eleanor Kingsmore." The clerk read, "They cited an urgent need to secure temporary administration due to the unavailability and legal incapacity of other interested parties." "Legal incapacity," I repeated. The phrase tasted like ash. "The motion states that the respondent, that would be you, Ms. Kingsmore, is currently in the custody of law enforcement due to a violent incident at Briarport International Airport." The air in the cabin seemed to vanish. They had done it. They had taken the lie they told the police, the lie that had failed to get me arrested, and they had filed it as a fact in a court of law. They were telling the judge that I was not just late. They were telling him I was a criminal. They were painting a picture of a woman so unhinged she had to be dragged away by federal agents. "That is a false statement," I said. "I am not in custody. I am currently sitting on a plane, Flight 382, which departs in 10 minutes. I was cleared by airport police. No charges were filed. No arrest was made." "Ma'am, I just read what is in the filing," the clerk said. Her tone tightening. She was used to hysterical family members. She was already preparing to hang up. "If you want to contest the motion, you need to file a response. But the hearing is at 8:30. "I cannot file a formal response from a runway," I said. "And I cannot physically be there at 8:30 because the time was changed while I was boarding. This is a procedural trap designed to secure a default judgment. The judge has already signed the order," the clerk said. "If you are not present, the court will proceed based on the filings available." "Then I am requesting permission to appear remotely," I said. "I am requesting a telephonic or video link for the hearing. Judge Holloway does not allow remote appearances for evidentiary hearings unless a motion is filed 48 hours in advance," the clerk recited. It was a script, a wall. "This is an emergency hearing scheduled less than an hour ago," I countered. "The 48-hour rule cannot apply to a timeline that did not exist 48 hours ago. That is a violation of due process." "I cannot grant exceptions to judicial policy," the clerk said. "You will have to take that up with the judge." "I cannot take it up with the judge if I am not in the room," I said. The flight attendant was walking down the aisle, closing overhead bins. The engines were starting to whine. I was running out of time. I needed to change tactics. I could not argue with the clerk about policy. I needed to get the truth in front of the judge before he took the bench. I needed him to see the evidence of their deception before my parents opened their mouths. "I understand you cannot change the schedule," I said, shifting my tone. I became collaborative, respectful. "But you are the custodian of the record. You ensure the judge has all relevant materials before he rules, correct?" "That is correct," the clerk said, slightly less defensive. "I have documentation that directly contradicts the basis of the emergency motion," I said. "I have a police incident report from this morning clearing me of all threats. I have a record from the airline showing my father impersonated me to cancel my ticket. If the judge rules based on the claim that I am detained, he will be ruling on perjury. I need to submit these exhibits for Chambers review. Now, we do not accept evidence via email, the clerk said automatically. You have to file through the electronic portal or in person. The portal takes 24 hours to process, I said. The hearing is in 90 minutes. If I file through the portal, the judge will not see it until tomorrow. By then, he will have already granted my parents control of the estate. That is the procedure, ma'am. The attorney of record for my grandfather's will is Caleb Marrow, I said. I dropped the name like a heavy weight. Caleb was a fixture in Redmere. He had practiced in that courthouse for 40 years. Everyone knew him. Mr. Marrow is listed on the docket. He will be there. If I am forced to tell him that the clerk's office refused to accept exculpatory evidence regarding a fraud on the court, he will be very interested to hear why. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. The mention of fraud on the court is a trigger phrase in the legal world. It implies not just a lie, but a corruption of the judicial process itself. It implies liability. I cannot docket an email, the clerk said finally. Her voice was lower. It will not be part of the official public record until you file it properly. I do not need it docketed yet, I said. I need a courtesy copy placed on the judge's bench. I need him to see it before he calls the case, just for his information, so he knows the premise of the motion is factually incorrect. The flight attendant was 3 rows away. She was looking at me, tapping her watch. I have a secure inbox for Chambers correspondence, the clerk said. It is used for administrative scheduling. I can print what you send and place it in the case file as a correspondence received. I cannot guarantee the judge will read it before 8:30, but it will be physically in the room. That is all I ask, I said. Give me the address. She rattled off an email address. I typed it into my phone with shaking thumbs. Thank you, I said. You are protecting the integrity of the file. Send it now, she said. The judge takes the bench early. The line went dead. I did not waste a second. I minimized the phone app and opened my email client. I created a new message. Subject urgent. Exhibits for Chambers review. Case 492-B. Fiora Kingsmore. I attached the photo I had taken of the thermal paper from Officer Voss. The timestamp was clear. 6:22 in the morning. Status cleared. No threat detected. I attached the photo of the airline printout. Caller Malcolm Kingsmore. Reason unfit to travel. Then I opened my photo gallery. I scrolled back to the screenshots I had taken yesterday. Messages from my mother. You are sick. Fiora, you are imagining things. If you try to come to court, we will have to tell the judge about your episodes. We are doing this to protect you. I attached them. This was not a formal legal brief. It was a collage of truth. It was a messy, desperate attempt to show the judge that the concerned parents sitting in his courtroom were actually architects of a conspiracy. I typed a brief message in the body of the email. Honorable Judge Holloway, I am not in custody. I am on a plane to your courtroom. The petitioners lied to the police to detain me, and when that failed, they lied to this court to proceed without me. Attached is proof of my clearance by airport police and proof of the petitioner canceling my flight. Please do not rule until I arrive. Respectfully, Fiora Kingsmore. I hit send. The progress bar crawled across the top of the screen. The signal was weak inside the fuselage. Sending. Ma'am, the flight attendant said, standing over me. I need you to switch your device to airplane mode. We are pushing back. 1 second, I said. Please. The bar stalled at 90%. Ma'am, now, she said. The bar jumped. Sent. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. I switched the phone to airplane mode. The plane jolted as the tug began to push us away from the gate. I sank back into the seat. I had done what I could. The email was in the ether. Whether the clerk would actually print it or whether the judge would actually read it was out of my hands. I looked down at my lap. I still had the USB drive in my hand. I had intended to attach one more document to the email, the summary of the nursing logs. the smoking gun that proved my grandfather had been lucid when he signed his final will. Contrary to my parents' claims of dementia, I had not had time to attach it, but I had 2 hours in the air. I could review the files, organize them, and have them ready to project the moment I walked into the courtroom. I opened my laptop. I plugged in the USB drive. The familiar chime of a connected device sounded in my headphones. The file directory popped up on the screen. I scanned the list of folders: medical records, financial statements, legal drafts. I clicked on medical records. The folder opened. I froze. The files were there, but the names were wrong. Instead of nursing_log_october.pdf and doctor_notes_november.pdf, the files were named with strings of gibberish: XY799.dat or _corrupt_01. My heart hammered against my ribs. I double-clicked on one of the files. An error message flashed on the screen. File format not supported or file is corrupted. I tried another. Same error. I tried a third. Cannot open file. I stared at the screen, the blood draining from my face. This was not a technical glitch. I had checked this drive last night. I had opened every single file on my home computer before I packed it. They had been perfect. I looked at the modification date on the corrupted files. Today, 4:30 in the morning, 4:30. I closed my eyes, replaying the morning in my head. I had woken up at 4. I had showered. I had dressed. The bag had been sitting on the kitchen counter. I had left the room for 10 minutes to make coffee. My husband, Francis, had been in the kitchen. No, I pushed the thought away. Francis was on my side. Francis was the one who drove me to the airport. Francis was the one who held me when I cried after the funeral, but my parents had been calling him. They had been texting him, checking in on Fiora, making sure she is okay. I looked at the screen again. The corruption was total. The medical records, the core of my case, the only thing that could prove my grandfather was competent, were gone, turned into digital noise. Someone had accessed the drive physically. Someone had plugged it into a machine and run a scrambling program. I looked at the file size of the corrupted documents. They were 0 kilobytes. They were empty shells. This was not just sabotage. This was an inside job. I sat there as the plane taxied toward the runway, the engines roaring to life for takeoff. I was trapped in a metal tube, hurtling toward a courtroom where my parents were waiting to declare me insane. I had sent a desperate email to a judge I had never met, and the evidence that was supposed to save me had just evaporated in my hands. The paper version of Fiora Kingsmore was not just a threat anymore. It was becoming the only version left. The real Fiora, the one with the facts, was being erased file by file. I gripped the armrests as the plane accelerated. The G-force pressed me back into the seat. I did not cry. I did not scream. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone again. I could not send messages, but I could read old ones. I scrolled back to the texts between Francis and my father. Thanks for the update. Francis, we appreciate your help. Keep us posted if she leaves. I stared at the words. When I landed, I would have 20 minutes to get to the court. I had no evidence. I had no support. I had a husband who might be a traitor and parents who were definitely predators. But I was a Kingsmore, and if they wanted to erase me, they were going to have to do it while looking me in the eye. I closed the laptop. The plane lifted off the ground, leaving the earth behind. I was alone in the sky, and I had 2 hours to figure out how to win a war with an empty gun. The seatbelt sign chimed with a soft, electronic ping that echoed through the cabin. We had reached 10,000 feet. The engine roar settled into a monotonous hum, the kind of white noise that usually puts travelers to sleep, but I was wide awake. I was vibrating with a frequency that felt dangerous, like a wire pulled so tight it was about to snap. I looked at my hands resting on the tray table. The left one was trembling, just a micro tremor, a rhythmic twitch of the index finger. It was the adrenaline dumping out of my system, the physical aftershock of the sprint through the terminal, and the psychological warfare at the gate. I placed my right hand over my left. I pressed down hard. Stop, I whispered to myself. I held the pressure for 10 seconds, breathing through my nose, forcing my heart rate to synchronize with the steady drone of the turbines. I was not a victim. I was not a daughter. I was a strategist operating in a hostile environment. Panic was a luxury I could not afford. By the time I lifted my hand, the trembling had ceased. I was still. I was cold. I was ready. I pulled my laptop from the bag under the seat. I opened it, the screen glowing bright in the dim cabin. I logged onto the airline's network portal. The connection page loaded with agonizing slowness. The circle spinning and spinning. Select a package full flight surf. $19.99. I typed in my credit card number. My father had tried to cancel my ticket, but he had not yet thought to freeze my personal cards. That was an oversight, a mistake. I bought the most expensive, the highest bandwidth package available. The connection established. I was online. I opened my email client. I did not check my inbox first. I did not want to see what new horrors had arrived. I hit compose. I addressed the email to the clerk of the Redmere County Probate Court. I copied the email address for Caleb Marrow, my grandfather's estate attorney. I kept the message brutal in its brevity. 5 lines. No please. No adjectives. Subject notice of appearance and urgent filing. Estate of Kingsmore, Fiora Kingsmore. Am currently airborne on Flight 3 MAM82. Arriving at 8:15 in the morning. I am not in custody. I have not been arrested. The assertions made in the petitioner's emergency motion regarding my detention are factually false. I am appearing remotely via this correspondence until I can physically enter the courtroom. I hit send. It was a flag planted in the ground. It was proof of life. Now I needed reinforcements. I put on my headset and activated the Wi-Fi calling feature on my phone. I dialed Francis. He answered on the first ring. Fiora. His voice was tight, breathless. Where are you? The tracking app says your phone is off. I am in the air, I said. I am on the plane. Francis, I made it. I heard him exhale, a sound that was half sob, half laugh. Thank God. I thought when the ticket disappeared from the shared calendar, I thought they had stopped you. They tried, I said. They failed. I paused. I needed to gauge him. The corrupted USB drive was still burning a hole in my mind. Someone had wiped those files. But right now, at 30,000 feet, Francis was my only link to the ground. I had to use him, even if I did not fully trust him. Francis, I said, what is happening on your end? Your dad called me, Francis said. The words came out in a rush. About 20 minutes ago, just after you would have been boarding. What did he say? He was calm. It was scary. He asked if I knew where you were. He said they were very concerned about your mental state. He said you had a psychotic break at the airport and that the police had to subdue you. He is lying, I said. I have the police report clearing me. What did he want from you? He wanted me to confirm that you have been acting erratic lately, Francis said. He said, Francis, we need to protect her from herself. If she calls you, you need to keep her calm. Tell her to stay where she is. Do not let her come to the court. It will only traumatize her. He wanted you to be his jailer, I said. He said they are filing for an emergency order, Francis continued. He used the word hold. He said they want to get you into a facility for evaluation before you hurt yourself. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cabin temperature. This was the endgame. It was not just about the money anymore. It was about invalidating my existence. If they could get a court to sign a mental health hold, anything I said about the will, about the nurse logs, about the neglect, it would all be dismissed as the ravings of a madwoman. Francis, I said. My voice was steel. Listen to me very carefully. Did he leave a voicemail? No. He called my cell directly. Did he text you? Yes. Afterward, he sent a text saying, please call us if she makes contact. We are so worried. I need you to screenshot that text, I said. And I need you to go into your call log. Screenshot the incoming call time. Screenshot the duration. If you have any voicemails from my mother, forward them to my email, right now. Surely we can just talk to them. No, I cut him off. We are done talking. Every word they say to you is evidence of a conspiracy to defraud the court. Send me the files. Francis, do it now. Okay, he said. Okay, I am sending them. And Francis? Yeah. If I am not there when the hearing starts, I said. Do not let them in the house. Change the alarm code. If they show up, you call the police. Do you understand? I understand, he said. Fly safe. Feet. I hung up. I did not have time to process the betrayal in my father's request to my husband. I had to focus on the weapon I still had. I reached into my bag and pulled out the manila folder. The police had scanned it but not opened it. My father had tried to steal it but failed. The USB drive was dead, wiped clean by some invisible hand, but paper has no circuit board to fry. Paper does not suffer from data corruption. I opened the folder on the tray table. Inside were 12 sheets of paper. They were photocopies of the handwritten logs from the night nurse who had attended my grandfather, Arthur, on the night he died. My parents claimed Arthur had died in his sleep, peacefully, alone. They claimed they had found him in the morning. The log told a different story. 2,200 hours. Patient distressed. Administered morphine per instruction of daughter. Eleanor. 23:30 hours. Patient requesting legal counsel. Daughter Eleanor present. Argument observed. 100 hours. Patient unresponsive. They had been there. They had argued with a dying man, and they had lied about the time of death to cover up the fact that they had pressured him to sign a codicil while he was under the influence of morphine. I took out my phone. The camera lens was my scanner. I laid the first page flat on the tray table. The lighting was poor, harsh overhead reading lights casting long shadows. I adjusted the window shade, letting in the brilliant, blinding white light of the upper atmosphere. It flooded the small workspace. Click. I checked the image. Sharp, legible. The handwriting was jagged but clear. Click, click, click. I worked with the efficiency of a forensic photographer. I photographed the nurse's log. I photographed the affidavit from the neighbor who saw my mother's car in the driveway at midnight. I photographed the timeline I had constructed, matching the medical doses to the signatures on the will. I had 10 images, 10 nails for their coffin. My phone buzzed. A text message. It was from my mother, Fiora. Honey, please turn around. We are at the courthouse. The judge is very concerned about the police report. We are trying to stop them from issuing a warrant for your safety. Just let us handle the estate. We can get you the help you need. I read it and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness. It was like reading a script from a bad movie. The judge is very concerned about the police report. She was admitting they had already poisoned the well. They had already told the judge I was a criminal. I took a screenshot of her text. It was another piece of the puzzle. It proved they were using the threat of legal action to coerce me into surrendering my rights. I went back to my email. I created a new message. Subject, supplemental evidence. Exhibits A through J. I attached the photos of the nurse logs. The upload bar moved with excruciating slowness. 1%, 5%. I watched the blue line crawl. The plane hit a pocket of turbulence. Jolting the laptop, I put a hand on it to steady it, my eyes never leaving the upload status. Come on, I whispered. Come on. While the files uploaded, another email landed in my inbox. The subject line read, Notice of Withdrawal of Counsel, Estate of Kingsmore. My heart skipped a beat. I opened it. It was on official letterhead. Dear Ms. Kingsmore, due to the recent developments regarding your legal standing and the conflict of interest arising from the police incident this morning, this firm can no longer represent your interests in the matter of the estate of Arthur Kingsmore. We are withdrawing our appearance effective immediately. Sincerely, Caleb Marrow, Esquire. I stared at the screen. If Caleb withdrew, I was alone. I had no standing. The judge would not let me speak without representation on procedural matters. I felt the panic rising again, a cold tide in my chest. Then I looked closer. I looked at the email address of the sender, Admin Caleb Marrow Law. I looked at the signature block, Caleb Marrow, Esquire, Partner, Marrow and Associates. I frowned. I had emailed Caleb a dozen times. I knew his signature. I opened a previous email from the real Caleb Marrow. His firm was called Marrow, Hinge and Associates, and his email domain was calebmarrowhinge.com. I looked back at the withdrawal notice. The logo was slightly pixelated. The firm name was wrong, and the sender address was a generic domain that looked right only if you glanced at it quickly. It was a fake. Someone had registered a fake domain, created a fake letterhead, and sent me a withdrawal notice in the middle of a flight to make me give up. They wanted me to think my own lawyer had abandoned me. They wanted me to walk into that courthouse defeated, believing I had no one in my corner. A laugh bubbled up in my throat. It was a sharp, jagged sound that made the passenger in seat 12B look at me with concern. They were terrified. You do not forge a lawyer's resignation letter unless you are absolutely desperate. You do not spoof a domain name unless you know you are going to lose on the merits. They were throwing everything at me: police, airline cancellations, fake emails, gaslighting texts. They were trying to break my reality, but they had made a fatal error. They assumed I would read the email and collapse. They assumed I would cry. I did not cry. I hit forward. I typed in the email address of the real Caleb Marrow. Caleb, see below. Someone is impersonating your firm to intimidate a witness and a party to the case. I am bringing this printout to the judge. See you at 8:30. I hit send. The upload of the nurse logs finished. Sent. The forward to Caleb finished. Sent. I sat back in my seat. I was 5 miles above the earth. I was moving at 500 miles an hour, and I was absolutely armed to the teeth. I looked out the window at the sea of clouds below. Somewhere down there, in a limestone courthouse in Redmere County, my parents were sitting at a mahogany table, putting on their sad faces, telling the judge how much they loved their troubled daughter. They had no idea what was coming out of the sky. I closed my laptop. I took a sip of water. My hand was steady as a rock. "Ladies and gentlemen," the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "We are beginning our initial descent into Redmere. The weather is clear, and we expect an on-time arrival." "Perfect," I whispered. I was not just a passenger anymore. I was the storm. The tires of the Boeing 737 slammed against the concrete of the runway at Dunhaven Regional Airport. The impact was violent, a physical jolt that shook the entire cabin. But to me, it felt like a handshake. I was on the ground. I did not wait for the plane to slow down. I did not wait for the seatbelt sign to turn off. I reached into my pocket and deactivated airplane mode. The screen of my phone remained black for a second, a terrifying pause where I feared the signal would not connect. Then, the bars flickered to life. 4 bars, 5G. The phone began to vibrate instantly. It was not a text. It was a call. Caleb Marrow. I accepted the call and pressed the phone hard against my ear, ducking my head to create a private sound booth amidst the noise of passengers unbuckling belts and opening overhead bins. "Fiora." Caleb's voice was breathless. He was not in his office. I could hear the echo of marble floors and the distant murmur of voices. He was in the hallway of the Redmere County Courthouse. "Where are you?" "I am on the ground," I said. "We just landed. I am taxiing to the gate. Did you get the email? Did you see the fake resignation letter?" "I saw it," Caleb said. His voice was grim. "But that is not the worst of it. I just stepped out of chambers. Your father is in there right now. He is making a formal proffer to Judge Holloway on the record." "What is he saying?" "He told the judge that you were not just detained," Caleb said, lowering his voice to a harsh whisper. "He told the judge you were handcuffed. He used the phrase, 'dragged away by federal agents.' He is claiming you had a psychotic break at the security checkpoint and are currently being held for a 72-hour psychiatric evaluation." I felt the blood drain from my face, but my hand remained steady. It was the audacity of the lie that stabilized me. It was so big, so verifiable, that it crossed the line from strategy to suicide. "He lied to a judge," I said. "On the record." "He thinks you are in a cell," Caleb said. "He thinks you have no way to contradict him until tomorrow. He is pushing for an immediate emergency guardianship to protect the assets while you are incapacitated. I am not incapacitated, I said. I am on a runway 2 miles away. I know, Caleb said. I printed your email. I have the attachments. The clerk handed them to Holloway 5 minutes ago. But Holloway has not looked at them yet. He is letting your father talk. He's letting him dig the hole. Caleb, I said, do not hang up. Keep this line open. I am going back in, Caleb said. I am going to put you on speaker. Do not speak until I tell you. Do not interrupt the judge. But be ready, if Holloway allows it. I am going to bring you into that room electronically. I am ready, I said. I heard the rustle of fabric as Caleb slid the phone into his pocket, or maybe against his chest. Then came the heavy sound of a double door opening. The ambient noise changed. The echo disappeared, replaced by the heavy, muffled silence of a courtroom. I was sitting in seat 12A, surrounded by tired travelers wrestling with their luggage, but my consciousness was 5 miles away in a room that smelled of old wood and justice. Mr. Marrow, a deep voice boomed. It sounded tinny through the phone speaker, but the authority was unmistakable. Judge Holloway. You have returned. Yes, Your Honor. Caleb's voice was clear now. And I have an urgent update regarding the status of the respondent, Fiora Kingsmore. Does this update concern her arrest? Holloway asked. His tone was dry, unreadable. It concerns the allegation of her arrest, Your Honor, Caleb said, and I would ask the court's indulgence to address a discrepancy in the narrative presented by the petitioners. Discrepancy, another voice scoffed. It was my father, Malcolm Kingsmore. He sounded smooth, confident, the grieving patriarch doing his best to hold it together. Your Honor, with all due respect to Mr. Marrow, my daughter is in a federal holding cell. We are just trying to ensure the estate is not left in limbo while she recovers. Mr. Kingsmore, the judge said, please refrain from speaking until addressed. There was a pause. I held my breath. The plane had stopped moving. The seatbelt sign chimed off. People were standing up, blocking the aisle. I remained seated, my head bowed. My entire world focused on the speaker of my phone. The court, Judge Holloway said, and his voice dropped an octave, becoming dangerously quiet. The court does not like being used as a tool. The silence that followed was absolute. I have received a correspondence from the clerk's office. Holloway continued. It was sent to the chamber's email address at 7:30 this morning. It contains an image of a thermal receipt from the Department of Homeland Security. I heard the rustle of paper. Clerk, Holloway said, please read the text of Exhibit A into the record. A woman's voice, the court clerk, spoke up. Exhibit A is a photograph of an airport police interaction receipt. Incident number 492-Bravo, time 6:22 in the morning. Subject Fiora Kingsmore. Status stopped. Identified. Cleared. Notes. No threat detected. No contraband found. Subject released to terminal. Released, Holloway repeated. Not arrested. Not handcuffed. Not dragged away. Your Honor. My father's voice returned. But the smoothness was gone. It was higher. Tighter. We were told she was detained. We received a call. From whom? Holloway asked. Who called you? Mr. Kingsmore. The police do not call family members to gossip about security checks. It must have been a misunderstanding, my father stammered. We were just so worried. We assumed the worst because of her history. Mr. Marrow, Holloway said. You have more. I do, Your Honor, Caleb said. I am submitting Exhibit B. It is a transaction history from the airline, printed at 6:45 this morning. It details the cancellation of Fiora Kingsmore's original ticket. I object, a new voice said. It was the lawyer my parents had hired, a man named Sterling. This is hearsay. These documents are not authenticated. They are authenticated by the fact that my client is currently listening to this proceeding, Caleb said, and she can testify to their origin. She is here, Holloway asked. She is on the phone, Your Honor. Caleb said, She has just landed at Dunhaven Regional. I moved to allow her to appear telephonically to address the emergency motion. Motion granted, Holloway said immediately. Put her on. There was a fumbling sound, and then Caleb's voice came through loud and clear. Fiora, you are on speaker. The judge can hear you. I took a breath. The passenger in the aisle seat next to me was staring, but I did not care. Good morning, Your Honor, I said. My voice was steady, projected from my diaphragm, cutting through the static. This is Fiora Kingsmore. I am currently on the tarmac at Dunhaven Regional Airport, aboard Flight 382. Ms. Kingsmore, Holloway said. Are you in handcuffs? No, Your Honor. Are you in the custody of any law enforcement agency? No, Your Honor. Then why did your father just swear under oath that you were... Because, Your Honor, I said. My father and mother are attempting to secure a default judgment by fabricating a crisis. The document Mr. Marrow holds shows that my ticket was canceled this morning not by the airline, but by a caller identifying himself as Malcolm Kingsmore. Mr. Kingsmore, the judge said. Did you cancel your daughter's ticket? My father was silent. Mr. Kingsmore, the judge repeated. You are under oath. Did you call the airline? I did it for her safety, my father burst out. The facade cracked completely. She is not well. Your Honor, you do not know what she is like. She was flying here to cause a scene. She was going to disrupt the hearing. I was trying to protect the court. I was trying to protect the public. Protect the public, Holloway asked. From a probate hearing. She is unstable. My mother cried out. It was a sharp, wailing sound. She is sick. Please, you have to help us help her. It was a performance I had seen 1,000 times. The tears, the trembling hands, the victimhood. Usually, it worked. Usually. People saw a crying mother and assumed the daughter must be a monster. But Judge Holloway was not looking at the tears. He was looking at the timeline. Mrs. Kingsmore, compose yourself, Holloway said. His voice was like ice water. This court is not interested in theatrics. This court is interested in facts. And the facts before me are that you filed an emergency motion to move this hearing up by 2 hours, citing your daughter's incarceration, at the exact same time you were actively preventing her from traveling. My father started. That is interference, Holloway said. That is obstruction, and frankly, it looks a lot like fraud. Your Honor, Sterling, their lawyer, tried to intervene. My clients acted out of a genuine belief that... Counsel, sit down, Holloway snapped. Unless you want to be sanctioned along with them, I suggest you stop talking. The room went deadly silent. Ms. Kingsmore, Holloway said, addressing the phone. Are you en route to this courthouse? I am, Your Honor, I said. I will be there in 20 minutes. Good, Holloway said, because we are going to wait for you, but before you get here, I am issuing a preliminary order. I heard the scratch of a pen on paper. It was a loud, aggressive sound. I am ordering the petitioners, Malcolm and Eleanor Kingsmore, to surrender their cellular devices to the bailiff immediately. Holloway said, What? My father gasped. You claim you received a call from the police, Holloway said. You claim you acted on information regarding a threat? Fine, we will verify that. The bailiff will take custody of your phones right now. We will pull the call logs. We will pull the text messages. And we will see exactly who called whom. Your Honor, this is a violation of privacy, Sterling shouted. This is a probate court, Holloway countered. I have broad discretion to investigate allegations of incapacity and fraud involving the estate, if your clients are telling the truth. The phone logs will vindicate them, if they are lying. Well, then we have a very different conversation. I heard a scuffle. I heard my mother protesting. I heard the bailiff's heavy footsteps. Hand them over, the bailiff's voice rumbled. And one more thing, Holloway added. Mr. Marrow, you mentioned an email from a fake law firm. Yes, Your Honor, Caleb said. Sent to Ms. Kingsmore at 30,000 feet, purporting to be from me, withdrawing from the case. Add that to the discovery pile. Holloway said. If that email originated from an IP address associated with the petitioners, I will be referring this matter to the district attorney. I closed my eyes and leaned my head against the seat back. The tension that had held my body together for the last 3 hours finally released, leaving me weak. Ms. Kingsmore, Holloway said, get here safely. Do not speed. The court is in recess until you arrive. Thank you, Your Honor, I whispered. The line clicked dead. I lowered the phone. My hand was shaking again, but this time it was not from fear. It was from the sheer, overwhelming release of seeing the truth finally land a punch. Ma'am? I looked up. The flight attendant was standing there. The plane was empty. I was the last person on board. Are you okay? She asked. I stood up. I smoothed my blazer. I picked up my bag. The bag that contained the paper files that had just saved my life. Yes, I said. I am better than okay. I walked down the aisle. I walked out of the jet bridge and into the terminal of Dunhaven Regional. I saw my reflection in the glass of the arrival gate. I looked tired. My hair was slightly messy. My eyes were dark circles, but I did not look unstable. I walked toward the exit doors. My father and mother were waiting for me in that courtroom. They were sitting there without their phones, stripped of their digital weapons, waiting for the daughter they had tried to erase. I hailed a taxi. Redmere County Courthouse, I told the driver. And please, drive the speed limit. The judge is waiting for me. The air in the Dunhaven Regional Arrival Hall was stale, recycled, and cold. It smelled of floor wax and damp wool. I walked past the baggage claim carousels, which were spinning empty circles, their rubber belts slapping against the metal with a rhythmic, hypnotic thud. I did not have checked luggage. I only had my carry-on, the bag that I had guarded with my life for the last 4 hours. I moved toward the exit, my eyes scanning the crowd of waiting drivers and family members. They held cardboard signs with names scrawled in black marker. Johnson. Miller, Smith, none of them were for me. I was not expecting a welcome committee. Fiora, the voice came from directly behind my left shoulder. It was a whisper, sharp and distinct, cutting through the low rumble of the terminal. I spun around on my heel, my hand instinctively going to the strap of my bag. There was no one there. A group of teenagers in college hoodies was laughing near a vending machine. An elderly couple was hugging. A janitor was pushing a wide mop across the linoleum. None of them were looking at me. None of them had spoken. I stood there for a moment, my heart rate spiking. It was not a hallucination. I knew that voice. It was not my father, and it was not my mother. It was the voice of a professional. It was a neutral, genderless tone designed to trigger a reflex. I looked up at the mezzanine level. A man in a gray coat turned away from the railing and walked toward the elevators. I did not see his face. I did not need to. The message had been delivered. We know you are here. We are watching. I turned back to the exit and pushed through the automatic doors. The night air outside was heavy with moisture. It was not raining, but the pavement was wet, reflecting the harsh yellow glow of the streetlights. Cars idled at the curb, their exhaust pipes puffing white clouds of steam into the darkness. A black sedan pulled up. The window rolled down. It was Francis. My husband looked 10 years older than he had when I left the house this morning. His face was pale, drawn tight around the eyes, and his hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles were white. He did not smile when he saw me. He unlocked the doors with a loud, mechanical clunk. I got in. The car smelled of fast food and nervous sweat. Drive, I said. Just drive. Go to the hotel. Francis pulled away from the curb. He checked the rearview mirror 3 times in the first block. Did you see them? Francis asked. His voice was brittle. I heard them, I said. I looked at him. Why are you here? Francis, I told you to stay at the house. I told you to lock the doors. I could not stay there, he said. He kept his eyes on the road. They called the house line. Then they called my cell. Then they called my work cell. They knew I was alone. So you left. I had to, he said. I drove down. I made it in 5 hours. I thought you might need a ride. It was a lie. Not the part about the drive, but the reason. He was not here to be my chauffeur. He was here because he was running from something. We drove in silence to the hotel. It was a mid-range chain on the outskirts of Redmere, the kind of place used by traveling salespeople and people attending court hearings who did not want to be seen in the town square. The sign flickered a neon blue M that buzzed intermittently. We checked in. I paid cash. I did not want another credit card trail for my father to track tonight. The room was on the 3rd floor, facing the parking lot. The carpet was a dark maroon, patterned to hide stains. I locked the door and engaged the deadbolt. Then I pulled the heavy blackout curtain shut, leaving only a sliver of space to watch the cars below. "Okay," I said, turning to Francis. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. "Tell me." "Tell you what?" he mumbled. I sat down at the small desk and opened my laptop. I plugged in the corrupted USB drive. I had already seen the damage on the plane, but now I had the tools to look at the autopsy. I ran a diagnostic tool, a simple piece of software I used for recovering data from damaged video files. The screen filled with lines of code. File system error. Sector 0 overwritten. I looked at the access logs. Last write access today. 0432 hours. Device ID MacBook Pro. User Francis_H. I stopped breathing for a second. The coldness in my chest expanded. 4:32 in the morning, I said quietly. I was in the shower. You were in the kitchen making coffee. Francis did not look up. You plugged it into your laptop, I said. You ran a wipe utility. You destroyed the medical records. I did not want to, Francis whispered. His voice broke. Fee, I swear, I did not want to. Why? I asked. I did not yell. Yelling is for people who still have hope. I was past hope. I was in damage control. How much did they pay you? They did not pay me, Francis said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He threw it on the bed. They threatened me. I walked over and picked up the paper. It was a printout of an email attachment. Draft complaint. Superior Court of California. Plaintiff Kingsmore Holdings, LLC. Defendant Francis Hillmere. Cause of action. Tortious interference. Breach of fiduciary duty. Corporate espionage. I scanned the legalese. It was a masterpiece of intimidation. They were not suing him for helping me. They were suing him for misappropriating proprietary family data and sharing it with third parties. They were claiming that by helping me access the estate documents, he was violating a non-disclosure agreement he had signed 5 years ago when my father loaned us money for our house down payment. And the kicker was at the bottom. We will also be forwarding a copy of this complaint to the Ethics Committee of your employer, naming you as a liability risk. Francis was a compliance officer at a bank. A lawsuit alleging breach of fiduciary duty would end his career before the ink was dry. He would be fired. He would be blacklisted. They sent it to me at 4 a.m, Francis said. Dad called me 2 minutes later. He said if that USB drive left the house intact, he would hit send on the email to my boss. I looked at my husband. He was a weak man. I had always known that. He was kind, he was gentle, but he was soft. My parents were sharks. They had smelled the blood in the water and they had bitten him in half. So you wiped it, I said. He promised he would drop the lawsuit if I did, Francis said. He said he just wanted a fair fight. He said the nursing logs were fake anyway. And you believed him. I was scared. Fee, I am 40 years old. I cannot lose my job. I cannot lose my pension. I looked at the paper in my hand. Then I looked at the USB drive. The evidence was gone. My husband had betrayed me to save his own skin. But in the strange, twisted logic of this game, he had also given me something new. This document, I said, tapping the paper. Did it come from my father's email address? Yes, Francis said. And the voicemail he left you, the one where he told you to wipe the drive. I think I still have it. You think? I did not delete it, Francis said. I was too panicked. I walked over to him. I put my hand on his shoulder. I did not squeeze it in comfort. I gripped it like a vice. "Francis," I said, "you are going to do exactly what I tell you. If you do, you keep your job. If you do not, I will personally make sure this document becomes public record in a divorce proceeding, and you will lose everything anyway." Francis looked up at me, eyes wide. He saw the shift. He was no longer looking at his wife. He was looking at the woman who had just stared down a federal judge. "What do I do?" he asked. "Unlock your phone," I said. "Open your email. I want the header information from the email my father sent. I want the IP address. I want the server route. And I want that voicemail exported and saved to my laptop." "Okay," he said. He was trembling. "And then," I said, "you are going to write a statement. You are going to write exactly what happened at 4:30 this morning. You are going to write, 'Malcolm Kingsmore coerced me into destroying evidence under threat of professional defamation.' You are going to sign it. And we are going to get it notarized at the front desk." "He will sue me," Francis said. "No, he will not," I said, "because once this statement is filed, his lawsuit becomes witness tampering. That is a felony. Francis, he can sue you for money. I can put him in prison." Francis nodded. He pulled out his phone. He began to type. I turned back to the window. The rain had started. It was a light, misty drizzle that made the neon signs of the strip mall across the street blur into streaks of red and blue. My phone rang. It was Caleb Marrow. "Fiora," Caleb said. "I'm in the lobby." "Come up," I said. "Room 304. 2 minutes later. Caleb walked in. He looked tired. His tie was loosened, and he was carrying a leather briefcase that looked like it weighed 50 pounds. He glanced at Francis, who was typing furiously in the corner, but he did not say hello. He knew a casualty when he saw one. "Update," Caleb said, placing the briefcase on the small round table. "The judge moved the main hearing to tomorrow morning at 9, Caleb said. "He wants you physically present. He wants your parents physically present. And he wants an explanation for the airport stunt." "That is good," I said. "That gives us time." "It is not all good," Caleb warned. "Your father's lawyer, Sterling, filed an ex parte motion 10 minutes ago. They are claiming that since the validity of the will is now in dispute, the assets need to be frozen immediately to prevent dissipation." "Freezing is fine," I said. "I do not need to spend the money. I just need them not to spend it." "They did not ask for a total freeze," Caleb said. "They asked for protective control. They want the court to appoint a temporary special administrator to pay the bills and manage the investments while the case is pending. And guess who they suggested?" "Let me guess," I said. "A neutral third party who just happens to be my father's golf partner." "Close," Caleb said. "They suggested Sterling Trust Services, a subsidiary of their lawyer's firm. If they get control," I said, "they will drain the operating accounts in fees before we even get to trial." "Exactly," Caleb said. "The judge is reviewing the motion tonight. He might sign it before morning if we do not object." "We cannot just object," I said. "We need to block it at the source." I picked up the hotel phone. I dialed 0. "Front desk," a cheerful voice answered. "I need an outside line," I said. "Dial 9, the voice said. I dialed 9. Then I dialed the number for the private wealth division of First Sovereign Bank. It was 7:30 in the evening, but First Sovereign had a 24-hour line for high net worth estates. "First Sovereign, Arthur Kingsmore Estate Line." A man answered. "This is David." "David," I said. "This is Fiora Kingsmore. I am calling regarding account number 8492. "Good evening, Ms. Kingsmore," David said. "How can I help you?" "I am providing you with verbal notice of a contested probate proceeding," I said. "The case number is 492-Bravo, filed in Redmere County. There is an active dispute regarding the executor status." "I see," David said. The warmth left his voice. "Bankers hate disputes. We have not received a court order yet." "You will," I said. "But until you do, I am putting you on notice that any transfer of funds authorized by Malcolm or Eleanor Kingsmore is potential dissipation of estate assets. If you release 1 cent to them before the judge rules tomorrow, First Sovereign will be named as a co-defendant in the recovery action. Ms. Kingsmore, David said, we cannot freeze an account based on a phone call. I am not asking you to freeze it, I said. I am asking you to place an administrative hold for verification. That is internal policy. David, I know it is. You have a duty to verify authorization when there is a reported conflict. I am reporting the conflict. If you move money tonight, you are doing it with knowledge of the fraud. There was a silence on the line. I could hear David typing. He was flagging the account. He was putting a big red digital sticky note on the file that said, "Do not touch." I have noted your call, David said stiffly. We will require the court documents by 9 in the morning. You will have them, I said. I hung up. That buys us 12 hours, I said to Caleb. Caleb nodded. It is a stopgap, but it works. Francis stopped typing. I sent it, he said. The email headers, the voicemail, and the statement. Good, I said. My phone buzzed again. I looked at the screen. It was a text message from an unknown number. Area code 650. That was a California number, but not one I recognized. I opened the message. It was a single image, no text. I clicked on it to expand. It was a black and white photograph taken from a high angle. It looked like footage from a doorbell camera or a security system. The image showed the front porch of my grandfather's house. The house number, 420, was clearly visible under the porch light. Standing at the door was a woman. She was wearing a long trench coat and holding a large handbag. Her face was turned partially toward the camera. It was my mother. I looked at the timestamp in the corner of the photo. October 14th, 8:15 in the evening. My breath caught in my throat. In her sworn affidavit, my mother had stated, "We arrived at my father's house at midnight. After receiving the call from the nurse, we were not present earlier in the evening." She had lied about the time. She had arrived 4 hours early. 4 hours. That was the window. That was the missing time when the will had been changed. That was the time when the nurse had logged, "Patient distressed." I looked at the number again. 650. Who sent this? I typed a reply. Who is this? 3 dots appeared, then a message. Someone who watched them do it. Check the bushes. I stared at the phone. What is it? Caleb asked. I turned the screen so he could see. My mother was there, I said. She was there at 8:15. She was there when he was still lucid. She was there before the morphine kicked in. Caleb adjusted his glasses. He looked at the photo, then at me. This changes the timeline, Caleb said. If she was there at 8, and she claimed she was not, that is perjury, that proves opportunity. Who sent it? Francis asked from the bed. I do not know, I said. But they told me to check the bushes. The bushes? Caleb asked. At the house, I said. My grandfather's house. I grabbed my coat. Where are you going? Francis asked. It is pouring rain. The hearing is tomorrow, I said. If there is something in those bushes, a camera, a backup drive, a witness, I need it before 9 in the morning. I looked at Caleb. You stay here. Draft the opposition to the Sterling Trust motion. Use Francis's statement about the USB drive to show bad faith. And you? Caleb asked. I am going to the crime scene. I said. I walked to the door. I paused and looked at Francis. You stay here, I said. Do not answer the phone. Do not open the door. If my father calls, you are asleep. Francis nodded. He looked small. I walked out into the hallway. The elevator dinged. I stepped inside. The trap at the airport had failed. The trap on the plane had failed. But the real secrets were not in the sky. They were buried in the wet dirt of a garden in Redmere County, waiting for someone brave enough to dig them up. The rain outside the hotel window had turned into a steady, rhythmic drumming against the glass, a sound that usually helped me write. But tonight, I was not writing fiction. I was editing reality. The room looked less like a suite and more like a tactical command center. Caleb Marrow had pushed the two armchairs together to form a makeshift desk. I had taped sheets of hotel stationery to the large mirror above the dresser, creating a timeline that spanned the last 24 hours. It was one thing to feel the attacks happening to you in real time. It was another thing entirely to see them mapped out in black ink. "Look at the intervals," Caleb said, pointing to the first sheet with the end of his pen. "It is not just harassment, it is a syncopated rhythm." I looked. 5:12 in the morning, first call to airport police, dropped. 5:14 in the morning, second call, dropped. 5:16 in the morning, third call. Report filed. "They were testing the line," I said. "My father was building up the nerve." "Keep going," Caleb said. 5:25 in the morning, airline ticket canceled by Malcolm Kingsmore. 6:50 in the morning, emergency motion filed to move the hearing time. 7:10 in the morning, fake resignation letter sent to my email. "It is a pincer movement," Caleb said. He took a sip of lukewarm coffee from a paper cup. "They tried to physically stop you at the airport. When that failed, they tried to legally stop you by moving the hearing, when they thought you might make the flight anyway. They tried to psychologically stop you by making you think your lawyer had quit. They wanted me to give up," I said. "They did not care if I was actually arrested. They just wanted me to be too exhausted to fight. And that," Caleb said, tapping the glass, "is where they lost, because they created a record of interference. In probate court. Fiora. The worst sin is not greed, it is obstruction. Judges expect families to fight over money. They do not expect parties to sabotage the judicial process itself." I turned away from the mirror and looked at the laptop sitting on the bed. The recovery software was still running in the background, churning through the sectors of the USB drive that Francis had tried to wipe. The progress bar was stuck at 99%. Francis was sitting in the corner chair, his hands clasped between his knees. He looked like a ghost. He had not spoken in an hour. "Francis," I said. He jumped slightly. "Yeah. I need you to look at this photo again." I pulled up the image I had received earlier, the black and white shot from the doorbell camera. The timestamp read 8:15 in the evening. "That is my mother," I said. "Standing on the porch, 4 hours before she claimed she arrived." "It proves she lied," Francis said softly. "It proves more than that." I said. I walked over to the second timeline. I had taped up the timeline of the night my grandfather died. "I have the nurse's log. At 10 o'clock at night, the nurse noted that the patient was distressed. She administered morphine." I drew a line connecting the photo to the nurse's log. "If my mother arrived at 8:15, I said, "she had nearly 2 hours with him before the morphine kicked in. 2 hours while he was lucid. 2 hours to pressure him, to threaten him, to make him sign the new will. And then they waited." Caleb finished the thought. "They waited until he was unconscious. Then they called the nurse back in, acted surprised, and pretended they had just arrived at midnight to find him dying. They stole his last hours," I said. The anger that rose in my chest was cold and sharp. "They did not just steal the money, they stole his peace." Caleb sat down on the edge of the bed and opened his legal pad. He clicked his pen. "Tomorrow morning," Caleb said. "We do not go in there screaming. We do not accuse them of murder. We do not accuse them of forgery. That is too high a bar to clear in a preliminary hearing." "So what do?" I asked. "We trap them in the timeline," Caleb said. "I am going to put your father on the stand, and I'm not going to ask him why he did anything. If I ask him why, he will give a speech about how much he loves you and how worried he was. He will cry. The judge might buy it. So no whys," I said. "Strictly who, when, and where." Caleb said, "Mr. Kingsmore, did you call the police at 5:16, yes or no? Mr. Kingsmore, did you call the airline at 5:25, yes or no? Mrs. Kingsmore, were you at the residence at 8:15 in the evening, yes or no?" "They will lie," Francis said. "I am counting on it." Caleb smiled, but it was a wolf's smile. Because every time they lie about a verifiable fact, a phone log, a camera timestamp, a flight record, they commit perjury. And once I catch them in one lie, the judge has to disregard their entire testimony. It is called falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus, false in one thing, false in everything. I looked at Francis. He was watching me with a mixture of fear and admiration. I need to talk to my husband, I said to Caleb. Alone for a moment. Caleb nodded. He stood up, gathered his papers, and walked to the bathroom. Closing the door behind him to give us privacy, I sat down on the bed next to Francis. I did not touch him. You need to understand something, I said. This is not about the $6 million. I do not care if I walk out of there with nothing but my grandfather's watch. Then what is it? Francis asked. Why go through this? Why almost get arrested? Because of the word they used, I said. Unstable. I looked at my hands. They were steady now. If I let them win, I said. If I let them tell the court that I'm mentally incompetent, that label sticks. It goes into the public record. It follows me. Every time I apply for a job, every time I sign a contract, every time I try to adopt a child or take out a loan, there will be a judicial finding that says Fiora Kingsmore cannot be trusted with her own life. Francis looked down. I did not think about that. You thought it was just a family spat, I said. But it is not. They are trying to erase my personhood. They are trying to turn me into a child so that they can be my guardians forever. I took a breath. I am going to win tomorrow, I said. But I need to know where you stand, because when we walk into that courtroom, you are going to be sitting behind me, and if my father looks at you, you cannot flinch. I am with you, Francis said. I wrote the statement. I gave you the voicemail. I am done being their pawn. Good, I said. But here's the new rule. From this moment on, you do not speak to them. You do not text them. You do not answer their calls. If they send a carrier pigeon, you eat it. Every single communication goes through Caleb or through me in writing. I promise, Francis said. If you break this rule, I said, even once, we are done. Not just the case, us. Francis nodded. He knew I meant it. The bathroom door opened, and Caleb stepped back out. We have a problem, Caleb said. Or maybe an opportunity. What is it? I was reviewing the statutes while I was in there, Caleb said. If we can prove that your parents filed the emergency motion based on false information they knew was false because they created it, the court has the authority to do more than just deny the motion. Like what? I asked. It is called unclean hands, Caleb said. If a party comes to the court with unclean hands, the judge can strip them of their standing entirely. We can ask the judge to remove them as executors immediately and appoint an independent administrator, and he paused. And the judge can refer the matter to the district attorney for investigation into witness tampering and filing false instruments. Caleb said, Fiora, if we play this right, your parents are not just leaving without the money. They might be leaving in the back of a squad car. I felt a heavy silence settle in the room. This was the precipice. It was one thing to beat them. It was another to destroy them. I thought about the airport. I thought about the cold metal chair in the interrogation room. I thought about Officer Voss asking if I was a threat. Do it, I said. Draft the motion. It is the nuclear option, Caleb warned. There is no going back to Thanksgiving dinner after this. We stopped having Thanksgiving dinner a long time ago, I said. We just did not admit it. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up. A text message. Sender Dad. I opened it. Fiora, we know you are in town. We saw the flight land. Do not come to the courthouse tomorrow. If you try to make a scene, we will have the mental health warrant executed right there in the lobby. You will be taken away before you even get through the metal detectors. Don't make us do this. Go home. I read the text twice. You will be taken away. It was the same threat they used when I was a child. Behave, or we will send you away. Be quiet, or we will give you something to cry about. I did not reply. I took a screenshot. I forwarded it to Caleb. Add it to the exhibit list, I said. Exhibit K. Attempted intimidation of a witness on the eve of trial. Caleb looked at the text and shook his head. He just cannot help himself. He has to have the last word. He thinks I am afraid, I said. He thinks I am the same little girl who used to hide in her room when they argued. I walked over to the window and looked out at the rain. The streetlights were blurring on the wet pavement. I am going to write a statement, I said. For the opening. I do not want Sterling to do all the talking. Keep it short, Caleb advised. Judges hate speeches. It won't be a speech, I said. It will be a clarification. I sat down at the desk and pulled out a piece of hotel stationery. I began to write, Your Honor. My name is Fiora Kingsmore. I am not here to fight for an inheritance. I am here to fight for the truth of my grandfather's final hours. The petitioners have used every tool at their disposal, police, airlines, and even this court to prevent me from speaking. They have done this not because I am unstable, but because I am the only witness to their deception. I put the pen down. It was enough. Behind me, the laptop let out a soft ding. I turned around. The recovery software had finished. A window had popped up on the screen, recovery complete. 7 files restored. I rushed to the bed. Francis moved aside. I scanned the list. Most of the files were still garbled fragments of PDF headers, broken spreadsheet cells. The wipe Francis had performed had been thorough regarding the documents. The nurse logs I had scanned on the plane were safe, but the digital originals were gone. But at the bottom of the list, there was one file that had survived. memo_voice_004.w. It was an audio file. My grandfather used to dictate his letters. He had an old digital recorder he kept by his bedside. I had transferred some of his files to the USB drive weeks ago to transcribe them for his memoirs. I hovered the mouse over the file. The date stamp was October 14th, the night he died. What is that? Francis whispered. I don't know, I said. I clicked play. The sound of static filled the room. Then, a breathing sound, ragged, wet, the sound of a man struggling for air. This is Arthur, the voice whispered. It was weak, barely audible, but it was him. It is 8:30. They are here. I grabbed Caleb's arm. 8:30. He confirms the time. The voice on the recording coughed. A terrible, rattling sound. She is yelling. She wants me to sign the paper. She says if I don't sign it, she will not give me the medicine. She says she will let the pain come back. I covered my mouth with my hand. Tears, hot and sudden, pricked my eyes. They had withheld his pain medication. They had tortured him. I am so tired. My grandfather's voice continued. I just want to sleep. Malcolm he is holding the pen. He is putting it in my hand. Fiora, if you find this, I am sorry. I had to sign. The pain is too much. I had to sign to make it stop. There was a click. The recording ended. The silence in the hotel room was deafening. It was heavier than the rain. Heavier than the fear. Heavier than the $6 million. Francis was crying. Silent tears ran down his cheeks. Caleb took off his glasses. He wiped them slowly with his tie. His hands were shaking. That is not just fraud, Caleb whispered. His voice was hoarse. That is elder abuse. That is extortion. That, I said, my voice trembling with a rage so pure it felt like white fire, is the end of them. I looked at the laptop screen. The little icon of the audio file looked so small, so insignificant, just a few megabytes of data. But it was the voice of the dead, reaching out from the grave to point a finger. They wiped the documents, I said. But they forgot the dictaphone. They forgot he recorded everything. Fiora, Caleb said. This changes the venue. This might not even stay in probate court. This is a felony. We play it, I said. Tomorrow, in open court. We have to authenticate it, Caleb said, his lawyer brain trying to catch up with the emotional shock. We need to prove it is his voice. My mother will prove it, I said. When she hears it, she will react, and the judge will see it. I closed the laptop. I walked back to the window. The rain was stopping. The first gray light of dawn was beginning to touch the horizon. My father had told me not to make a scene. He had told me I would be taken away. He was right about one thing. Someone was going to be taken away tomorrow. "Get some sleep," I told Caleb and Francis. "We have court in 3 hours." I did not sleep. I sat in the chair, watching the sun come up over the wet parking lot, listening to the ghost of my grandfather's voice in my head. I had to sign to make it stop. "It stops today. Grandpa," I whispered to the empty room. "I promise." The morning sun hit the limestone steps of the Redmere County Courthouse, turning the building into a blinding white fortress. I did not shield my eyes. I wanted to see everything. Yesterday, I had been a barefoot passenger standing on cold tiles, stripped of my belt and my dignity. Today, I was walking up these steps in my heels, carrying a briefcase that contained the wreckage of my parents' reputation. I pushed through the heavy oak doors. The air inside was cool and smelled of furniture polish and old paper. My husband, Francis, walked half a step behind me. He was pale, but his jaw was set. He kept his eyes forward, refusing to scan the hallway for the people who had threatened to ruin his career. Caleb Marrow walked beside me, his stride matching mine. He did not look like a tired lawyer anymore. He looked like a gladiator entering the arena. We reached courtroom 4B. My parents were already there. They were sitting at the petitioner's table on the left. My father, Malcolm, was wearing his navy suit, the one he wore for board meetings and funerals. My mother, Eleanor, was in black, clutching a tissue. They looked perfect. They looked like the grieving, concerned parents of a troubled child. When I walked in, my father turned. He saw me. For a fraction of a second, the mask slipped. His eyes widened, not with love, but with the shock of seeing a ghost. He had spent 24 hours trying to erase me from this timeline, and yet, here I was. I did not nod. I did not smile. I walked to the respondent's table and sat down. I placed the manila folder on the wood surface. I placed the laptop next to it. "All rise," the bailiff bellowed. Judge Holloway entered. He was a man in his 60s with a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. He moved with the slow, heavy momentum of a glacier. He took the bench, adjusted his glasses, and looked down at the 2 tables. "Be seated," Holloway said. The room settled. The silence was heavy, pressurized. "We are here for the emergency hearing in the matter of the estate of Arthur Kingsmore," Holloway began. His voice was low, resonating off the wood paneling. "But before we address the assets, we are going to address the conduct of the parties." He looked directly at my father. "Mr. Kingsmore," Holloway said, "yesterday, you stood in this courtroom and told me that your daughter was in federal custody. You told me she was dangerous. You asked me to grant you emergency powers based on that exigency. Your Honor." My father stood up. He used his best reasonable man voice. "We were acting on the information we had. We were terrified. Fiora has a history of emotional outbursts. We were trying to protect the integrity of the proceedings and the safety of the public." "Sit down," Holloway said. He did not raise his voice. He simply cut the air with his hand. "Mr. Marrow," Holloway turned to Caleb. "You filed a supplemental evidence packet at 6 o'clock this morning. Are you ready to present?" "We are, Your Honor," Caleb said, standing. "Proceed." Caleb walked to the podium. He did not look at my parents. He looked at the court reporter. "Your Honor," Caleb said, "the petitioners claim they were worried about safety. They claim they received a call. We would like to play Exhibit C. This is the recording of the call received by the airport police dispatch at 5:16 in the morning yesterday." Caleb tapped his laptop. The audio boomed through the courtroom speakers. "Yes. Hello. I need to report a passenger, my daughter. She is not well." My father's voice filled the room. It was smooth, calculated. "She is headed to the inheritance hearing this morning. She said if she does not get what she wants, no one will be walking away." Caleb paused the recording. "Your Honor," Caleb said, "the caller mentions the inheritance hearing explicitly. But we also asked the court to look at Exhibit D. These are the call logs from the same number, showing 2 disconnected calls in the 4 minutes prior to this report. Rehearsal, Holloway murmured. And finally, Caleb said, Exhibit E, the internal record from the airline. At 5:25 in the morning, 9 minutes after reporting her as a terrorist threat, Malcolm Kingsmore called the airline, impersonated the passenger, and canceled her ticket using the reason code unfit to travel. Caleb turned to look at my father. This was not fear, Your Honor, Caleb said. This was a coordinated tactical strike to prevent the respondent from appearing in this court. My father's lawyer, Sterling, jumped up. Objection counsel is speculating on intent. Mr. Kingsmore was trying to stop a volatile individual from getting on a plane. Overruled, Holloway said. The timeline speaks for itself. Continue. Mr. Marrow. Thank you, Caleb said. But the deception did not start yesterday. It started on October 14th, the night Arthur Kingsmore died. My mother stiffened. I saw her hand grip the edge of the table until her knuckles were white. The petitioners have submitted a sworn affidavit stating they arrived at the decedent's home at midnight, Caleb said. They claim they found him unresponsive. They claim he had signed the new will days prior. Caleb pulled up the image on the projector screen, the black and white doorbell photo. This image was taken at 8:15 in the evening on October 14th, Caleb said. It shows Eleanor Kingsmore standing on the porch of the decedent's home, 4 hours before she claimed to arrive. A murmur went through the gallery. And this, Caleb continued, holding up the nurse's log, is the medical record from that night. At 10 o'clock at night, Arthur Kingsmore was administered morphine for severe distress. If Mrs. Kingsmore arrived at 8:15, she had nearly 2 hours with him while he was lucid, 2 hours that she has lied about under oath. Your Honor, Sterling shouted. This is an ambush. We have not seen these photos. You would have seen them if your clients had not tried to wipe the evidence drive, Caleb said calmly. He looked at me. I nodded. Your Honor, Caleb said, we have one final piece of evidence. It was recovered from a digital dictaphone recorder belonging to the decedent. We authenticated the voice file this morning using samples from his previous estate planning videos. Caleb pressed a key. The static hissed through the room. Then, the wheezing, ragged breath of my grandfather. This is Arthur. It is 8:30. They are here. My mother let out a small, strangled sound. She covered her mouth with her hand. She is yelling. She wants me to sign the paper. She says if I do not sign it, she will not give me the medicine. The room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the ventilation system. My father was staring at the table, his face a mask of gray ash. My mother was shaking. I am so tired. I just want to sleep. Malcolm is holding the pen. He is putting it in my hand. The voice on the tape coughed a wet, painful sound that made my heart ache. Fiora, if you find this, I am sorry. I had to sign. The pain is too much. I had to sign to make it stop. Not let them turn you into the crazy one. They said they would tell everyone you were sick if I did not sign. Caleb stopped the tape. For 10 seconds, no one moved, no one breathed. The words hung in the air like smoke. Do not let them turn you into the crazy one. It was the master key. It explained everything. The airport, the police report, the mental health warrant. It was not a new strategy. It was the same threat they had used against a dying man. Judge Holloway slowly took off his glasses. He looked at my parents. His face was unreadable, which was terrifying. Malcolm Kingsmore, Holloway said. My father stood up. He looked smaller than he had 5 minutes ago. His suit looked too big. Did you call the airport police yesterday? Holloway asked. Yes or no? My father opened his mouth. He looked at his lawyer. Sterling looked away. I made a call, my father whispered. Did you cancel your daughter's ticket? Holloway asked. Yes or no? Yes. Did you withhold pain medication from Arthur Kingsmore on the night of October 14th to coerce a signature? No, my father shouted. That recording, he was confused. He was on drugs. The recording states he had not been given the medicine yet, Holloway noted coldly. That was the leverage. Holloway turned to my mother. Eleanor Kingsmore, were you at the house at 8:15 in the evening? My mother was sobbing now, not the theatrical tears of yesterday, but the ugly, terrified tears of someone who sees the walls closing in. I just wanted him to do the right thing, she wailed. Fiora would have wasted the money we were trying to save the family. You are under oath. Holloway slammed his hand on the bench. The sound cracked like a gunshot. Were you at the house at 8:15? Yes, she screamed. Yes, I was there. Holloway sat back. He picked up his pen. The court has heard enough, he said. He wrote on the docket sheet. The scratching of the pen was the only sound in the room. The petitioner's emergency motion for guardianship over Fiora Kingsmore is denied with prejudice. Holloway ruled. The court finds that the petitioners have engaged in a pattern of bad faith, obstruction of justice, and attempted fraud on the court. He looked up. Furthermore, the court finds that the will dated October 14th was procured through undue influence and duress. It is hereby invalidated. The estate will proceed under the prior will dated 2020. My father slumped into his chair. The prior will left everything to me. But we are not done, Holloway continued. I am removing Malcolm and Eleanor Kingsmore as executors of any estate matters. I am appointing a neutral third-party administrator from the county list to oversee the transition of assets. And regarding the conduct I have witnessed here, Holloway said, his eyes narrowing, I am issuing a preservation order. All devices, all emails, all phone records belonging to the petitioners are to be surrendered to the sheriff's office immediately. Nothing is to be deleted. Nothing is to be wiped. He looked at the bailiff. Take custody of their personal effects now. The bailiff moved forward. My father handed over his phone. He looked at me. His eyes were pleading now. He mouthed the word, Fiora. I looked at him. I did not feel triumph. I did not feel joy. I felt a profound, quiet relief. I am directing the clerk to forward the transcript of this hearing, along with Exhibits C through L to the district attorney's office, Holloway said. There is probable cause here for charges of perjury, filing a false police report, and elder abuse. Sterling stood up. Your Honor, surely we can handle this civilly. You are lucky I am not holding you in contempt, Counselor, Holloway snapped. Sit down. The judge turned to me. Ms. Kingsmore, he said. His voice softened. I apologize that this court was used as a weapon against you. You are recognized as the sole beneficiary. You are free to go. Thank you, Your Honor, I said. I stood up. I gathered my files. I closed my laptop. I walked past the petitioner's table. My mother was weeping into her hands. My father was staring at the floor, defeated by the very system he had tried to manipulate. They were not going to jail today, but the investigation would start tomorrow. Their reputation was gone. Their control was gone. They were trapped in the paperwork. They were trapped in the transcripts, the affidavits, and the recordings. They had spent their lives building a cage for me, and now the door had locked behind them. I walked out of the courtroom. Francis was waiting for me in the hallway. He looked at me, and for the first time in years, he looked at me with total clarity. It is over, he said. Yes, I said. It is. I walked out the front doors of the courthouse. The sun was high now. The rain had dried up. I took a deep breath of the fresh, clean air. I was Fiora Kingsmore. I was not unstable. I was not a victim. I was the woman who had rewritten the story. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Are you listening on your commute, at the gym, or maybe relaxing at home? Please let me know in the comments below so we can connect and share our thoughts. If you enjoyed this journey of justice, please subscribe to the Juliet Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and support us by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people. Your support means the world to us.